Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Kilo Talk podcast. This is episode 11. We got a great show for everyone today. We're going to dive into a little bit of a different topic than what we're used to here on this podcast. We're going to talk about high school powerlifting. We are joined by Mark Leebrick. He's a high school powerlifting coach, and we're going to let him jump in and tell everyone a little bit more about himself and some of his experience with powerlifting. So why don't you go ahead, Mark?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Yeah, like you said, I'm a high school powerlifting coach in South Louisiana. Powerlifting is a big deal here. It's pretty big. We're one of the biggest states as far as powerlifting goes. So I've been powerlifting since I was actually about 15. So this has kind of become my passion over the last few years. My best lifts were actually a few years ago when I was still in college at collegiate nationals. I had a raw squat of 518, a bench of 341, and then a deadlift of 540. So those are just kind of my best numbers over my time. And I'm actually going to be competing here in a few weeks at the Southern States Championship in Jacksonville. So pretty excited about that. So, I mean, I kind of really got into it as a way to become a better football player, which is a pretty common theme I find amongst a lot of powerlifting guys. So that's just kind of how I got in to the world of powerlifting. And coaching actually wasn't originally in the cards for me. I really didn't know what I wanted to do in college, so. I about a year after I graduated high school, somebody I lifted with actually came to me and was like, "Hey, man, our coach is leaving to take a job to work on the river, in a logistics position." So he was making more money, and I get it, but they had no coach. So a guy I lifted with a couple years younger than me was like, "Hey, we need somebody, and we know you could help us out." And we did really well that year. It was luckily at my alma mater, so it was kind of cool. I was able to coach there, and we did really, really well, like I said, and it's stuck. And that's, I think, going on 6 years ago. So it
Yeah, that's
kind
awesome. So
of revolved my life around it now in a way.
Yeah. So did you compete in high school yourself in the powerlifting program, or did you kind of just start powerlifting on your own? There really wasn't a program through your high school, and then you got into it more in college?
No. So actually, I did in high school. But like I said, it was just more of a means to become a better football player.
Yeah.
The powerlifting coach was also our defensive coordinator, and then eventually our head football coach. And I actually went into high school as a football and basketball player, and I stopped growing after like 8th grade, so basketball just wasn't really in the plans anymore. And powerlifting was way more fun to me anyway.
Okay, I think we're back. We had a little bit of some technical difficulties there, but hopefully we didn't lose any audio, and we'll be good to go. So we were just sitting there talking about, before we had our issue, we were talking about kind of your experience competing in high school. I guess, and this is going to kind of tie into something later, but from the point where you were competing to the point where now you are coaching, have you seen a big change in, we can even say powerlifting as a whole, but more specifically high school powerlifting?
Oh, definitely, especially in Louisiana. Before powerlifting was just a club sport. Now it's actually sanctioned under our high school athletic association. We've seen a lot of growth from that, as far as participation. A lot more schools are coming in to join powerlifting, and sending a lot more kids to the state championship. We were lucky last year that USAPL High School Nationals was in Louisiana, so we put out a good showing that year, as far as the number of athletes that went to nationals. So yeah, absolutely, it's changed for sure. Like I said, it's bigger.
Now in Louisiana, is it still affiliated with the USAPL? You talking about the state championships? Okay. Interesting.
But as far as USAPL goes, we have a great state chair. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with Travis Werner. He does a phenomenal job with like getting meets scheduled in the state, to give kids opportunities to qualify for nationals and things like that.
Travis
awesome.
is the 2021 Collegiate Nationals meet director, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's going to be in Baton Rouge. That's going to be a awesome experience too.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of touched on this a little bit where you were starting to compete in powerlifting because of football really to help you. And I know that's a pretty common thing for a lot of high school powerlifters I've seen over the years personally, where high school powerlifting isn't big where I'm from, but you do see a little bit of crossover from like private gym training and stuff like that. How do you think overall competing in high school is helps benefit like the personal development of that kid through high school, either sports wise or really just life wise?
Oh man, it's huge. I actually have seen a lot of kids, become who they are as people because of powerlifting. I have one young lady. She just graduated this year. Unfortunately, with COVID and everything, she didn't have a chance to lift the state championship. But so she, she was in the show class. Very, lacked confidence. But I nominated her for a scholarship during the season, and she had to write a short essay about it and or to the Powerlifting Association for the scholarship, and it just kind of like made me feel like powerlifting is doing something right for these kids because she just gained all this confidence and became a better person because of the sport. Like it just she fell in love with the sport, and it was the only sport she competed in, and she was just great student. She's going to go to LSU this year and become study psychology, and she wants to be a psychologist, and it made her who she was as a person.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's interesting to kind of talk about. And I would assume you experience this a lot with coaching athletes. But we've talked on past episodes how in powerlifting, you have a very unique community where there's people from all different backgrounds. And I bet you see this a lot in kind of high school as well, the different sports teams. So yeah, you have your football guys, but you also have you're talking about this girl, she didn't compete in any other sports. So it can bring a lot of people together in different ways. And I mean, it really brings together a strong community.
Oh, definitely. And that's the one thing that stands out about powerlifting. You can go anywhere and you may show up with no help at a powerlifting meet and somebody's willing to help you.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, definitely.
And
go ahead, Nick.
Just to kind of speak on that a little bit, I've been to meets before where I think it was in December at that meet in Fairmont where I just ended up like handling someone that day that I barely knew. I think you knew him, Other Wes, I think his name was. Yeah, so it's incredible to see, like, even just in a broad way, how helpful everyone is, and to bring a group of high schoolers, especially at that age. I know I had really had no direction in life at that point, and you really just don't know a lot about yourself in general, and to kind of put them in that environment where they can grow not only as athletes, but to put them in an environment where like they can see people helping each other and just bring them into this community I think is a really good thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree 100%. I mean, it's life-changing for a lot of kids, I mean, you don't know, like I've got some kids, I mean, granted, I coach at a private Catholic school where, most of the kids are well off, but there's a handful, they're struggling with some things at home, and this is kind of their escape every day to come lift for an hour and a half or 2 hours, to kind of get away from that stuff.
Right. It's a pretty wonderful outlet for just really everyone to take advantage of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been life changing for me too. Like I said earlier, I've kind of revolved my life around it. It's actually pretty cool. It's how I met my soon to be wife as well. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, she's still a high school powerlifting official, and that's how we met because I was coaching.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I guess well, at least where we're from, high school powerlifting is not super popular yet. Hopefully, we'll be moving forward. And there's a lot of people that are not even really aware that it exists, which is very sad. But it'd be something for any powerlifter to potentially maybe get involved with. So kind of what I want to talk about next is just give us a rundown on like kind of what your like day-to-day task as the high school powerlifting coach looks like how many days are you doing practice a week? Is it year round? Is it only in a certain season type of thing? And kind of what you do, even programming to help the kids in high school.
So I actually don't teach where I coach. So that's kind of a unique dynamic. I teach at a school that's not far from where I coach. So I'm not on campus all day. So I have a group of kids that do really, really well with communicating things to their teammates, which is crucial for me, being that I'm not on campus. But as far as, day to day, like during the season, it's, I leave one school, go to the other school. We start at 3:00. Depending on what phase of training we're in, we may go to 4:30, 5:00. Some days 5:30 when we're getting in gear and wraps and all that stuff. Programming, I do a lot of the programming on my own. I do have the help of some assistant coaches that do some of that as well. Off season, we kind of take an approach of it's voluntarily mandatory, I guess, if that makes any sense. It more or less, if you want to get better, you are welcome to be here 4 days a week and train. We're not during the summer and fall, we're not training for a meet, so to speak, but everything we do, if you're there, it's going to benefit you. And obviously I have kids that play other sports. I've got volleyball players, basketball players, softball players. So they have commitments to other things as well as school, which is first and foremost.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry. So that was actually something that kind of clicked for me right when you were saying that. And it's because I had wrestles for 7 years, all throughout high school and all throughout middle school. And it was one of those sports like any other traditional high school sport where in the off season you can really just not do anything and still be like, quote unquote, okay, for the upcoming season. So I often took like the off season off to do track or like lift weights or whatever. But it's, in my experience with lifting, is like it's mostly just your strength. So if you're really not doing anything in the off season, then you'll suffer a lot more than other high school sports, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I see it all the time. The old saying goes, if you don't use it, you lose it. And it's accurate. It's 100% true.
Yeah, so I do have a question. How many meets do you guys try to do, like as a team per year?
So we've got a pretty large team. We usually have anywhere from 20 to 25 boys and girls. So the most we can have it in a regional meet is 11. So I'll usually split that in half and take the more experienced group to one meet, and then the least experienced group to another meet just to kind of split it up to where I'm not coaching 25 kids at one time, or our whole coaching staff isn't coaching 25 kids at one time, because it's rough. I've done it before, and it's a long day. But I also don't want that younger group of kids to feel like they're getting overlooked because we're focusing more on the older kids, getting them ready for regionals and state and all that. So typically we'll do 2 invitationals, one with the older group, one with the younger group, and then the regional meet, and then the state championship. And then if there's any kids that want to qualify for nationals, which the past 2 years we've had kids qualify for nationals, then we'll do nationals. Typically nationals is the week after our state meet. So it's a quick turnaround there.
Yeah, definitely. So that seems like a lot of that could potentially be them competing a good bit in what a short period of time. Did you kind of say it was more winter to spring is when your season
so our
was?
season starts. Our first meet is the week before Christmas, and then our state championship is the middle of March.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, I think that'd be good. I know I preach a lot to when we've been involved with the West Virginia powerlifting team. We'll have new members join, and I think a lot of people misunderstand and think that they can only compete like once a year because they need time between meets. But I think it's very valuable, especially new lifters, to compete very frequently because a lot of the issues that come from your first couple meets, at least in my opinion, are some of the like things you don't think of that are not strength wise. So like listening to commands and things like that. So I could see where it's beneficial to kind of do multiple meets in that short period of time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way it's kind of set up in Louisiana, just about every weekend from the first weekend in January all the way to the middle of February or the third week in February, there is a meet, if not 2, 3, or 4 meets every weekend.
That's awesome. That's not something we see here in our area as much. I mean, we got a couple good meet directors, but it really, what do you say, Nick? Probably you can find a meet every other month somewhere in there.
It kind of depends on your search radius, really. So like personally, if I'm looking for a meet in the area, I'll go to like middle of Ohio all the way like to Virginia. And there's maybe like 5 every 2 or 3 months that are like within quote unquote driving distance of like where I'm currently at. Um, but definitely in the South, and those states with like sanctioned high school powerlifting, definitely seems to have a lot more competitions available.
Yeah, we've ran into the problem now of where schools are joining and not being able to get into these smaller invitational meets because they put a number cap on them, so that it's not this massive meet, and these younger new teams are having trouble getting experience in meets.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that kind of transitioned us well to the next thing I want to talk about is so it sounds like in Louisiana, and then I've also heard about this a lot in like Texas area as well. High school powerlifting is very plentiful. I mean, I've actually heard of a couple big lifters now that we hear on the national stage. It started out in the collegiate powerlifting, but really up north, it's almost non-existent. I mean, I have not heard of a school around us at all that offers an actual structured program. So at least I can say I think nationwide there's a lack of high school programs, and what you were speaking about earlier, there's a real need for one as far as if we look at personal growth and people that potentially might be lifelong competitors in the sport. How do you think high school powerlifting can kind of grow and branch out of just a smaller area as far as like up north or whatnot?
So I definitely think having a a group of really good meet directors would be extremely beneficial to those states up there where it's not a well known sport. And your state, your USAPL state chair, would be really could be really helpful to get meets scheduled in whatever state you may be in.
Yeah, definitely. You got anything to add to that, Nick?
Uh, I kind of see there's my viewpoint is basically just what you guys pretty much said. And I think we mentioned this on like a previous episode where we did the college rankings. Like it ultimately comes down from like administrative support, and just sometimes that doesn't exist in a lot of states where high school powerlifting doesn't exist either.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think there'll be a growth in high school powerlifting in the future, like nationwide, or do you think it's going to struggle a little bit? Where do you think that this could potentially go?
I kind of think powerlifting's here to stay, and I don't see any
Yeah.
reason it wouldn't grow. Um, we have states like Louisiana's big, Texas is big, Wisconsin is doing it really big. Actually, Arkansas just got into high school powerlifting this year, so it's growing, and a lot of people. I mean, y'all are up in that northeast area. not that Pennsylvania is in that area, but Pennsylvania is really big. So it's growing. It's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I think that'll be the case as well. It definitely seems like it's kind of. I know the West Virginia area seems it's kind of lacking a little bit. I've heard a little bit about PA, but I think there needs to be a need for it to grow as well. You'll see. I mean, I think a lot of the states that you're seeing that have already had the big growth tend to be they're matching up pretty good with like bigger high school sports states to begin with. I mean, like as far as football and different things. So I think maybe it just needs to trickle down like we've seen all around with any sport that might not be the most popular to start out in like high school, but I think it could potentially lead to a lot of growth just overall.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Arkansas has kind of, and obviously they're in the South, but they've kind of molded their model around, what Louisiana does, kind of a little bit of what Texas does. So that I think they're on the right path. So if we start seeing more states like that have never really done it before, that I think other people will be more inclined to, spark some interest.
Yeah, definitely.
So
sorry.
Yeah, so nationwide, and I'm not sure because I know Texas, or at least high school powerlifting in Texas is mostly single ply. Is that the case really everywhere else as well?
Yeah, in Louisiana for sure. I believe Wisconsin is the same way because they're affiliated with USAPL. Mississippi, same kind of deal. I've been over to Mississippi to referee some high school meets. The only big difference there is they don't use any bench shirts at all. So they'll get in squat suits, deadlift suits, but no bench shirts.
Interesting.
I found that very interesting.
So do you kind of see it as a barrier to entry for, let's say, if high school powerlifting were to catch on like in a really big way, and we have kind of nationwide state sanctioned meets for high schoolers. Is that something in your experience you've had to deal with? Because as we all know, just getting a squat suit, wraps, bench shirt, deadlift suit, like that stuff isn't cheap. So do you kind of foresee that being a barrier to entry, or in your experience, is it kind of possible for the school to subsidize that?
So I think if, like, say, you're a high school kid that's interested in powerlifting, your school doesn't have a team, and you really want to get into it, the cost of those things, the suits, the wraps, entry fees, what could possibly hold you back from doing that. We're pretty blessed with the school that I coach at. We do a lot of fundraising. We actually host 2 meets a year to defer the costs of, suits and entry fees and things like that. So, but like I was saying, if you are, solely, doing this on your own and your parents are helping you, yeah, it could definitely, for sure, keep you from getting into meets and really getting into powerlifting.
Yeah, why do you think that, as far as high school goes, why do you think single plies became such a popular thing versus your raw lifting?
I think it's, at least here, if you don't use it, you're just going to get beat. If you don't get in a squat suit and bench shirt and all the other stuff, you're behind. You are not going to be able to compete with those guys and girls that are in these, expensive katana and Titan suits. So I think that's why it's just it's stuck.
Yeah. So a raw division is not offered. It's just kind of open, I guess.
Yeah, there is no.
Okay, that's interesting.
Now, when we go to USAPL meets, if they choose to compete raw, you can go singlet, sleeves, wrist wraps. But that's in our Louisiana High School Powerlifting Association. There is no raw category.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So it's just kind of like you're saying, you need to have the gear to be able to compete because for the most part, no one's going to be able to compete raw against single ply lifting.
I mean, if you can, you're really, really good.
Yeah, you're very good. I've actually spent some time in a bench shirt before. it's kind of like challenging to learn. Do you have kids when they first start to get into powerlifting struggle with the equipment, or do they? I mean, it sounds like they have pretty good coaching, so you probably help them out a good bit. But do they struggle with that for their first couple meets, or do they kind of transition pretty well?
Well, we spend a lot of time, in the weight room working the shirts and the suits and all that stuff. But yeah, absolutely. There have been times where, kids come back from warming up and like, Coach, I couldn't touch with like 90% of my opener. And I was like, look, it's normal. You're going to be fine. Just, be patient and let the shirt do some of the work for you. And I've never had someone, knock on wood, miss a lift because the gear was, keeping them from getting depth on a squat, or they weren't touching on a bench or something like that. So luckily, I mean, that's never happened. But yeah, they absolutely do struggle for sure. We've got, a lot of kids, and this is typical for any high school athlete. They want instant gratification, and that just doesn't always happen. You may not hit depth the first day you get in your squat suit this year. You may not work but to a 2 board on bench in your shirt this week. So it's I always tell them that Rome wasn't built overnight. I mean, it's going to take time. So be patient and just stay the course.
Yeah, and that definitely ties into kind of what we were talking earlier with like personal development and having that challenge and having someone kind of reassure them that, hey, it's going to be all right. It takes some time. That's anything in life. So that's something that, like you're saying, a lot of high school athletes and a lot of sports, it's usually just kind of natural talent that takes over, like who becomes like the star. Like if you look at like football or basketball, things like that, but powerlifting, that's not really the case, especially in equipped powerlifting. So you're able to sit there and really teach them that, hey, it might take some time to work towards something, but at the end, if you sacrifice now, it's going to be very beneficial later. So that's really awesome that you can kind of coach them through that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it's always easy, but it all works itself out eventually. It really does. And like you said, it teaches them life lessons that they can carry with them.
Yeah. I tell you what, Nick, I think I'm about to get into single ply. I keep talking about it, and everyone else keeps talking about it. I might have to make the jump. We might have lost Nick. Is he there?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. Well, I think Nick's gone. But all right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about as far as high school powerlifting?
Oh, there he is. He's back.
Oh, there you are. We were just talking about single ply. I think he's still cutting in and out. So
yeah, I think so.
It'll be all right.
So there's a little bit of a lag, but so as a college or not college, sorry, as a high school coach, are you really like active in terms of, so your lifters graduate, do you kind of play a role in, placing them in certain collegiate clubs, or do you like, so in a traditional sense, like a high school coach will, look for colleges for their athletes to go to and stuff like that. Do you see yourself doing kind of the same thing for powerlifting, especially because, there's not a lot of like varsity teams in college?
Kind of yes and no. I have, some kids in the past have expressed interest, like, hey, coach, I want to keep lifting. And, I'll kind of point them in the direction of, hey, where are you going to school? Where have you decided to go to school? And if they have a team, I'll get them, the contact information of the president and whoever's, in charge of what's going on over there. We have some pretty good programs in Louisiana. LSU is pretty good. ULL is doing really good. So any of those kids that I have that go to those schools, they can choose to, continue on. And actually, believe it or not, I haven't had a whole lot of former lifters continue on into college and continue lifting, unfortunately.
Yeah, we actually, being involved with the DVU powerlifting team, we've kind of struggled with that in the past. Like we'll have some high school lifters reach out to us, and unfortunately, the way our school's set up, it's not like we can give out scholarships or anything.
Yeah.
So we try to be as like positive and give them as much feedback about our program as we can. But it's like anything when someone's trying to select a school. I mean, they want to look and see what, and I understand this, they want to see what's the best fit for them. So if we can't really offer them a whole lot because of the resources, we're kind of resource bound, and someone else comes in, it seems like it's a little better program, I could see why they go that route. But unfortunately, I think the lack of money and help in collegiate powerlifting kind of trickles down to what you're saying, where they don't get the opportunity to take the next jump into the collegiate world.
Yeah, I know there are some schools that are starting to offer some scholarship money. There's actually a school in North Mississippi that I've created a pretty good working relationship with that has started to offer some scholarship money. So it's starting. It's coming around. They actually recruited one of our boys pretty hard. He decided to stay closer to home and go to school, but they were very, very interested in him coming out there. And that's kind of the first time that I've really been, had to have conversations with a college coach about, hey, we want this kid to come live for us.
Yeah. And what's interesting is from like what you're telling us about your high school program, it seems like you have the opportunity to create a little more structured environment than we do, where we don't get the support from like the school and stuff and like the collegiate scene. So that's very interesting. And I almost think that us in the collegiate side should take some time to look and see kind of what you guys are doing in the high school area and see if there's maybe some like different tricks and stuff we can take, because that's the biggest problem about college. Everyone gets in there into college and they get into different groups of friends and stuff, and they kind of forget about powerlifting. We have trouble with that retention. So that'd be kind of something interesting to take a look at.
Yeah, it's definitely a much more controlled environment at the high school level. But those schools that are starting to give out, those colleges that are starting to give out scholarships, like if you really are interested in maybe like kind of revamping the structure, definitely reach out to those schools, because they have a pretty good setup. That school I was talking about in North Mississippi, it's called Blue Mountain College. It's a very small NAIA school. They do it right. They're doing a really good job. They're in their infancy of their program, but they're doing really well. They're building a training facility on campus, and they're doing things right. I really hope it sticks, and they hold their athletes to certain GPAs and standards and things like that. So I think the structure they have is going to work out really well for them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, do you have anything else you want to kind of put or talk about as far as the high school powerlifting?
No, man. I mean, if y'all have any more questions, feel free to ask. But it's kind of what it's like to be a high school powerlifting coach, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's been great talking to you about it. It's something that, I mean, it's really opened my eyes to something that might be a possibility to help out with in the future, and hopefully open some more people's eyes to that as well, that kind of listen to our podcast, that, hey, if you want to stay involved with coaching, this might be an opportunity to get in, and especially if you know your stuff, and really just help grow the community. I mean, if we start building it in high school level, it will, and we teach everyone positive, good or positive ways to train and the proper way to do things in powerlifting, it will ultimately work its way up to us having a better community and generate a lot of lifelong athletes.
Yeah,
I actually had a quick question. Oh, sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So this is kind of circling back to like the importance of high school powerlifting, and this might have been answered while like it was cutting out for me, but what motivation do you see for a lot of the students that join your team or like want to come out and try it? I assume there's quite a bit of people who use powerlifting to train for other sports, like, to become a better football player or basketball player or anything. But for people who really don't do any sports, what do you see kind of a common theme of their motivation to come out and try this sport specifically?
One thing for sure is, I think a lot of kids that haven't had a lot of experience with other sports, the typical sports we see, football, baseball, basketball, they just kind of want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. They want to be committed to something outside of school. And some of the best lifters I've ever coached, they really had never played any sports. So they didn't have, those old bad habits like some athletes unfortunately may have.
Yeah, that's real interesting. But I don't know. I really hope to see it grow here in the future and see the more programs pick up, especially in our area, for sure. So, if anyone has any questions about high school powerlifting or kind of want to know a little more about it, I'm sure if you reach out to Mark on Instagram, he can kind of let you know a little bit more about kind of stuff he goes through and maybe how to get involved. But so before we close things out, though, I thought it was kind of interesting when I was looking more, kind of studying more on what you do and different things like that, checking out your Instagram. I've seen these wooden racks that you're building or wooden gym equipment. So I assume that's because of the COVID virus going on right now. A lot of people are looking for home gym equipment. But what made you start doing this?
100% because I needed somewhere to continue training.
Yeah.
That was literally the sole purpose behind it. I had some scrap wood left over that I moved in a house about a year and a half ago, and they left some wood, and I was like, man, I could use that to start building a rack. And I kind of, was just messing around with it, and I built it, and it's actually held up pretty well. And then I reached out to a few people, and I've sold, maybe 3 or 4 racks, a few other things. But it's just kind of more or less to occupy my time because I haven't been able to go to work. As well. So.
Yeah, and anyone that wants to go check it out, go to his Instagram profile because these aren't like, I mean, I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff being built over the past like couple months, but these are some real legit looking squat racks. He's got some sleds, farmer carry equipment. Like, it's pretty cool, man. I checked that out earlier and I was like, man, that's awesome. So are gyms around you opened up now?
Yeah, they are, but I'm kind of content with still lifting at home. I really am.
Yeah.
I can lift when I want, play the music I want, and just, kind of do my own thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's what I've actually thought during this whole coronavirus. I was like, man, I want to jump in and get a home gym, but currently I live in an apartment, so that's not going to happen for a while, but maybe one day. But if anyone wants a gym equipment, I don't know if you can really ship it anywhere, but go ahead and check out his page. But hey, man, thanks for coming on the show. I mean, it's been a great show, and we were able to talk about something that we don't normally talk about, and hopefully shed some light to high school powerlifting and really just help it grow. I mean, I'm really glad you were able to get out your message and people can see this side of it. That's like high school powerlifting is very rarely talked about in the powerlifting community. You do hear some collegiate, but never really have conversations as far as high school. So I think it was really cool to just have you come on and talk to us, man. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I mean, it's definitely awesome. I've met some of my best friends through this sport. So I wouldn't change anything. It is, like I said earlier, it wasn't originally in the cards for me to be a high school powerlifting coach, but it's part of, who I am now,
Yeah, definitely. So why don't you tell everyone real quick where they can find you on Instagram or any other social media, so that way if they want to reach out about anything, they can.
Yeah, sure. So Instagram, you can find me. It's actually Mark _Roy _Junior. And then Facebook, it's just Mark Mark. My last name is Leebrick, Leebrick. And I'm actually also on Twitter. I know that's kind of crazy because, Twitter's kind of a younger kids thing, but I can't even honestly tell you. Actually, my Twitter handle is the same as my Instagram handle. So Mark _Roy _Junior. So yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you asked us about whether we have a Facebook or Twitter yet, and the answer so far is no, but you got me thinking about it, and I think I want to try to make us a social media for both, just kind of get out there a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Facebook's kind of, a little bit older population. But honestly, now, TikTok even, I mean, it's kind of crazy, things are, coming around. Like Reddit is a big thing now. So
yeah. I actually goof around Nick all the time. I'm gonna make a Kilo Talk podcast subreddit, but we haven't jumped the gun on that one yet. But, Nick, are you here?
Yeah, this is really annoying. Not you guys, the whole cutting out thing.
Okay, why don't you tell everyone where your Instagram's at real quick before you cut out again?
Yeah. So you can find me at notasquid99 on Instagram. That's my personal account, and then there's a link to like my side lifting account there as well in the bio. So I can be reached both ways there.
Yeah, and you can find me at Wes McKnight7 on Instagram. And while you're on there, go ahead and follow the Kilo Talk Podcast Instagram at Kilo Talk Podcast. You can find us now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And make sure to like, subscribe, whatever it is on that particular thing. So thanks to everyone for listening. Again, Mark, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thanks for having me.